All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another video. Yo. I am LP, writer and creator of the comic book Nyobi. I've been doing this now for a decade of dominance. No, not quite, but we've been here for a decade, publishing comics, making comics, now in the comic book shops. Find Nyobi Outbreak number 3 today. And with that, that gives me a little bit of wiggle room, a little bit of expertise to talk about comic books, comic book sales, and whatnot. No, not whatnot, the site, just whatnot. And here's what's going on today. DC Comics claims that Absolute Batman #1, the comic book taking everything by storm, is 2024's best selling, and this is an important word, and I want you guys to pay attention to this, comic. Because there is a difference, and I'm going to be going over this, and other people have noticed the difference, and we'll be going over this. But of course, Rich Johnson has to throw in, but is it? Well, it probably is if we're talking strictly the American floppy comic book format, and that's what DC is referring to. And we're going to see how evident that is as we go through this article from Bleeding Cool. So in a new press release, DC Comics states, as Absolute Batman from creators Scott Snyder, Nick Dragotta, Frank Martin, and Clayton Cowles tops the charts at retail after a successful launch and multiple additional printings. Yeah, I think they're at like 4 or 5 printings now. Bleeding Cool reported that the first issue of Absolute Batman had a print run of around 250,000. That's a lot, especially in today's age. And sales reports of subsequent second, third, and black and white printings have all taken up to around 400,000 in all. It's quite a bit. But that pales in comparison to Dogman and the Scarlet Shredder. 2 books that most comic book fans have no idea what they are. And the only reason why I even heard of Dogman is because of Level 2 Tyler, which had a 5 million copy print run in 2024. And between March and June of this year, sold over almost 900,000. Okay. And sold 100,000 in the UK alone up till August. Well over 1 million copies at this stage, coming up on 2. Well, that shouldn't be in any way that shouldn't in any way, they go on to say, tarnish Absolute Batman's success. Well, no, it doesn't, because they're 2 different things. And the odds are that it will indeed top the comic book direct market charts in store and at the end of the next month, as its rival Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. It's always a #1, people. That's the scam. We'll talk about that down the road. Relies heavily on retailer exclusive variants that don't get picked up by more than the general market surveys. They say, it also may be worth looking at the success of Bunny vs. Monkey, never heard of it. Heartstopper, never heard of it. Investigators, never heard of it. The Babysitters Club, isn't that an old movie? Big Nate, Kid Cat, and Wings of Fire, and many more comic books aimed at children, which are sold at bookstores and at book fairs and into libraries with print runs and sales many times that of Absolute Batman. Even the sales figures are hard to come by. Look, they're kids' books. Now, I get it. People are going to say sequential art, regardless of its form, is a comic book. I disagree. Wholeheartedly, I disagree. Okay, that's like calling a Dr. Seuss book, Cat in the Hat, a comic book. No, it's a children's book. It's a hardcover children's book. What makes a comic book different from a children's book or a graphic novel or a manga is the fact that it is a floppy. It's like 6 inches by 10 inches, give or take a centimeter or 2. Okay, roughly has 24 pages, maybe a little less, a little bit more. Usually stapled binding, saddle stitch. Okay, that is the American comic book. If Dogman was in that format, then I would call Dogman a comic book. I would call it a kid's comic book, but I would call it a comic book. If it's in the format of, say, a Dr. Seuss book or an old Sesame Street book that you would get back in the day in the 80s, which they are, I would call it a children's book at best. So children's books are sold at schools. Of course they are. At book fairs, at bookstores. Comic books generally are sold at comic book shops, and that's another difference. All right, you put Absolute Batman on the shelf at these bookstores, I wonder what would happen then. Of course, such large audience for comic books from kids may well lead into increased sales for the likes of Batman in the future. Anyone fancy the Dark Dog Man returns in 5 years? Oh my God. Where's the wrong buzzer for that? Sorry, you lose. Bad joke. Black Friday, Block Friday, get it, kids? Joke stoppers, watch monkey. Well, it could happen. That is, if manga doesn't hover over them all. Rich Johnson. This is the guy, by the way, who put this together. He must be a fan of Level 2 Tyler, because that's what they were saying. Well, Dogman does this and Dogman does that. Dogman's a kid's book. It might as well be Dr. Seuss. Okay, we are talking about the American comic book industry, superhero comics, and not just superhero comics, but things like The Walking Dead, Usagi Yojimbo, but American comics in the American comic format. Now, if we go down to the conversation here, we will see this guy here, and he says it perfectly, and I don't even think we need to look at any more. He says, this is Alex Jordan, I think the Dogman comparison isn't a fair one, and I would agree. As one that would be a graphic novel compared to Absolute Batman being a comic. See, here's another guy that understands the distinction and the difference. Now, if we were to compare graphic novels, I'll be for it. Though there is an Alan Moore argument that collected editions are not graphic novels. I would agree with that too. Usually they are omnibuses. These things have different designations and names for a reason, guys. I sell comic books. I sell Nyobi, and I sell them very well. In fact, you're going to find out more about that from our sponsor, me. And just who is the sponsor of today's video? Well, it's me, Austin. It's been me all along. And guys, I just want to quickly point out that I too am a comic book creator. I just don't speak it. I produce it, right? It's like put your money where your mouth is. We do that each and every time we have a release. I've been doing this now for a decade. We're published. We're in comic book shops, and we're on eBay. So if you ever want to check out Nyobi and you haven't yet, one of the best ways to do that is to come by our eBay store. Take a little scroll through here. If you type in Nyobicomics, you'll find it. Of course, link will be in the description of the video. I have all kinds of great back issues and hard to find variants here from artists that you know and love, like Jamie Tyndall, Elsie Frita, Steph Wilson, Paul Green, John Stinsman of Evangeline fame, Keith Garvey, and so many more, guys. If you're missing out on some Nyobi back issues, if you're looking for that hard to find variant, chances are you're going to find the best deal right here on eBay, and chances are you're going to find that deal directly through me. And as always, if you do order a book from me, I'll throw in a little extra goodies in there, a little tchotchke package of stickers and bookmarks and cards. Oh my. You'll have all that. Plus, you can have your book signed or unsigned. That is up to you. And keep an eye on this page because I do update it fairly frequently with new items all the time. As something sells, I will put it back up. So guys, today's sponsor, Nyobicomics, the eBay store. Come check it out.